Hey, this is Joe from 718 Cyclery and Outdoors here in Brooklyn, New York. I lead group bikepacking trips for a living, and here are my 6 tips for planning a new trip. So the planning tool that I like to use is Ride with GPS. There's a free version and a paid version. Very easy to snap on the map to create routes. It finds bike lanes and bike paths. It gives you real-time information as you're creating your route about surface type, about elevation climb. Gives you turn-by-turn information. Really easy to share with a group. And what's also really nice is you can actually add points of interest, all kinds of points of interest, so the group understands where the next stop is, where the campsite is. So again, this is Ride with GPS. So one of the rules I came up with for planning trips is what I call the 60-10 rule. That's basically understanding that a group can travel about 60 miles in a day at about 10 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour is a little bit slow, but it makes for a great planning module. So with that rule, you're then talking to a group about potentially riding 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon, and it kind of makes it palatable. We take that rule and we also use it for our longer trips. So if you take a look at our summer tour, which was Pittsburgh to DC, what we did was we figured out how far the trip was and then started working backwards with trying to come up with modules that talked about 60 miles in a day. In this case, it was 55 miles in a day. And you're able to kind of plan a trip and understand distances and understand timing for a group that's moving over a number of days. And here is what my initial planning document looked like. And that's a great segue into my next segment or next step, which is draw it. I was an architect for 20 years, so I draw a lot. But I find that drawing maps that I can easily hand out to folks really helps them understand where we're going. The simple truth of our trips is not many people study the maps, not many people pore over the GPS files. So what we do is we kind of create paper maps that I can give out to folks. And again, they just kind of resonate a lot more when you have a piece of paper in your hand that's drawn in a certain way versus a cue sheet or versus some kind of computer file. So I'm a big fan of drawing these things out to really flesh out where we're going. Step 4 is a technique I like to call start at the finish. And this talks about the idea that if it's a 1 day or 2 day trip, we generally know where we're starting and we know we're familiar with that area, but generally not as familiar with where we're going, right? So, what I talk about with start at the finish is understanding where the destination is, working backwards from there and looking at alternate campsites, looking at food locations, looking at stores and things like that, support locations. In the event that you don't make your destination, in the event that you come up short for whatever reason, weather, mechanicals, or whatever. So it's just kind of starting at the finish and really understanding what that finish line looks like in terms of services and road conditions and things like that. We don't like to over schedule our trips. We don't like to make it down to the minute and people feel like they're rushing around. But what I like to do is create a schedule for the day or a structure for the day. And it generally revolves around this kind of rough idea. We leave camp around 8 o'clock, maybe find a coffee place late morning, maybe 10 to 15 miles away for a little bit of a stop, find a place for lunch, which is relatively obvious. And then later in the afternoon, what I like to find is thinking about where the campsite is. I like to try to find a supermarket or a food source maybe 5 miles short of that, right? So we're stopping at that supermarket and buying food for dinner and potentially the next morning's breakfast, but you're not hauling the food around all day. Again, so that's kind of the rough structure that I like to kind of create for our tours, our micro tours, and our multi day tours. So you'll kind of see that again. It just kind of gives a bit of a framework for the group for understanding where we're stopping. And in addition to those stops, we do have other stops where we'll just stop every few miles and just kind of catch our breath or kind of catch the group up. So again, creating a rough structure, almost like a call sheet, I find really helps the group kind of stay together and kind of stay focused on what we're looking to do.
The last piece of this isn't much of a mystery. This is just digging around. This is using Street View to kind of look at streets you're unfamiliar with. I'll usually do this every half mile or so just to kind of get a sense of shoulders, get a sense of what traffic might look like, what some of those hills might look like. Also digging around in Google Maps looking for things like hospitals, bike shops, drugstores, places to stop to eat. Again, these are really important pieces of information that you can put on your map that allows a group to really understand what the day and what the trip is going to look like.
Hey, thanks for taking the time to watch our video about the 6 steps for planning your bikepacking trip. The idea here is we want to make these trips fun and we want to make them safe. Again, many thanks. Apologies for the crappy microphone on the voiceovers and the camera and all those things. I'm not a professional YouTuber quite yet, but if you subscribe and like and hit the notification button, that'll really help us a lot. Anyway, many thanks for watching, and you'll see us very soon.